The cargo ship drifted through the darkness of space like a lonely whale swimming through an endless ocean, and Commander Marcus Cole sat alone in the cockpit, watching the stars pass by his window. He was nobody special, just a human hauler carrying supplies to distant colonies in the outer verge, the most dangerous and lawless region of colonized space. His ship was old, and his pay was bad, but Marcus never complained because this was the only life he knew. Humanity had joined the Galactic Concord only 50 years ago, and humans were still the youngest and weakest species in a galaxy filled with ancient empires. The elder races looked down on humans like adults look down on small children, and most aliens believed that humans had nothing valuable to offer the galaxy. Marcus had accepted this truth long ago, and he simply did his job and kept his head down. On this particular night, his ship's computer suddenly beeped with an urgent warning. "Commander, I am detecting an unusual signal from Sector 7, the AI announced in its calm, mechanical voice. Marcus leaned forward and looked at his screen with tired eyes. He had been flying for 18 hours straight and wanted nothing more than sleep. But something about this signal made him curious. "What kind of signal?" he asked. "It appears to be a distress beacon, Commander. However, I must warn you that Sector 7 contains the debris field from a recent battle between Valanthi forces and Kethvari separatists. It would be extremely dangerous to investigate." Marcus knew he should ignore it and continue on his route. The outer verge was full of traps and tricks designed to lure foolish pilots to their deaths. Smart haulers never investigated strange signals, but something in his gut told him this was different. "Take us in," he ordered. "Slow and careful." The AI protested but obeyed, and soon the cargo ship was weaving through a field of destroyed warships and floating metal. The battle had been massive, and the wreckage stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Marcus had never seen destruction on this scale before. Whoever had fought here had used weapons powerful enough to tear apart ships like paper. The distress signal grew stronger as they approached its source, and soon Marcus could see it on his screen, a small diplomatic cruiser, broken in half and barely holding together. On its hull was a symbol that made his blood run cold. It was the royal seal of the Valanthi Dominion. The Valanthi were the most powerful empire in the known galaxy. They had ruled for over 10,000 years, and their queen was said to be immortal. No species dared to challenge them, and no species dared to harm their royal family. Yet someone had attacked this ship and left it for dead. "Commander, I strongly advise against boarding that vessel," the AI warned. "If Valanthi authorities discover a human near their damaged royal cruiser, they may assume hostile intent. The consequences would be severe." Marcus understood the risk. Humans had no standing in galactic politics, and the Valanthi could destroy Earth's entire fleet without breaking a sweat. Getting involved in their affairs was suicide. But the distress signal was still active, which meant someone inside was still alive. "Prepare the docking clamps," Marcus said quietly. "I am going in." The AI fell silent, and Marcus guided his ship toward the broken cruiser. The docking was difficult because half the cruiser was missing, but he managed to connect to an intact airlock. He grabbed his emergency medical kit and a small pistol, then stepped into the darkness of the alien ship. The interior was a nightmare of twisted metal and sparking wires. Emergency lights flickered red and purple, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air was thin and cold, and Marcus could see his breath forming clouds in front of his face. He followed the distress signal deeper into the wreckage, climbing over debris and squeezing through collapsed hallways. Twice he almost fell through holes in the floor, and once a piece of the ceiling nearly crushed him. Finally, he reached a sealed door with the royal symbol glowing faintly on its surface. This was some kind of safe room, designed to protect important passengers during emergencies. Marcus forced the door open with his tools, and what he saw inside made him gasp. A young alien female lay on the floor, her body covered in wounds and her strange bioluminescent skin flickering weakly like a dying candle. She was clearly Volanti, with her tall, graceful form and her large silver eyes, but she looked young, perhaps the equivalent of a human teenager. She looked up at him with fear and confusion. "Please," she whispered in the common galactic language. "Please help me." Marcus rushed to her side and opened his medical kit. Her wounds were severe, and her blood, which glowed faint blue, was pooling on the floor beneath her. She was dying, and she knew it. "Who did this to you?" Marcus asked as he worked to stop her bleeding. "HFY separatists," she answered weakly. "They attacked our convoy. They wanted to kill me to send a message to my mother." "Your mother?" The alien girl looked at him with those silver eyes, and Marcus saw ancient sorrow in them despite her young age. "I am Princess Alendra of the Volanti Dominion," she said. "My mother is Queen Sithara the Eternal." Marcus felt his hands begin to shake. He was holding the daughter of the most powerful being in the galaxy, and she was bleeding out on the floor of a wrecked ship. At that moment, his ship's eye spoke through his communicator with urgent panic in its mechanical voice. "Commander, multiple HFY vessels are approaching. They appear to be returning to the debris field. I believe they are coming to finish what they started." Marcus looked at the dying princess, then looked at his communicator. He had maybe 5 minutes before the killers arrived, and his cargo ship had almost no weapons. If he left now, he might escape. If he stayed, he would certainly die. The princess saw the calculation in his eyes and turned her face away. "Go," she said softly. "I understand. You owe me nothing. Save yourself." Marcus thought about his life, his empty apartment on a distant colony, his meaningless job hauling cargo through space. He thought about how the galaxy had never given humans a chance, how aliens always looked at his species with contempt. He could leave and no one would blame him. He could leave and survive. But when he looked at this wounded girl, he did not see an alien princess. He saw a scared child who was about to die alone in the cold darkness of space. And Marcus Cole was not the kind of man who could walk away from that. "I am not going anywhere," he said firmly as he continued treating her wounds. "We are getting out of here together." The princess stared at him with shock and confusion. No one had ever risked their life for her without expecting something in return. This human was either the bravest person she had ever met or the most foolish. Perhaps he was both. Outside, the HFY ships drew closer, and the hunt was about to begin. Marcus carried the wounded princess through the broken hallways of the cruiser as fast as he could, and her blue blood left a trail behind them like glowing paint on the dark metal floor. She was lighter than he expected, but she was also weaker than he feared. Her bioluminescent skin kept flickering, and Marcus knew from his basic xenobiology training that this was a very bad sign for Volanti. When their light went out, so did their lives. "Stay with me," he told her as they reached the airlock. "Keep talking to me." "Why?" she asked weakly. "Why do you keep talking?" "Because where I come from, no one dies alone," Marcus said as he pulled her through the docking connection. "And no one dies in silence." They reached his cargo ship just as the first HFY vessel appeared on the sensors. The enemy ship was sleek and black like a knife cutting through the stars, and it was heading straight toward them. Marcus placed Alendra on the medical bed in his small crew quarters and strapped her in tight. Then he ran to the cockpit and threw himself into the pilot's seat. "Disconnect from the cruiser and prepare for emergency flight," he shouted. The AI obeyed without argument this time, and the cargo ship pulled away from the wreckage just as the HFY opened fire. Explosions lit up the darkness behind them, and pieces of the royal cruiser flew in every direction. "They are pursuing us, Commander," the AI reported. "I am counting 4 enemy vessels." Our chances of survival are approximately 3%. Then, we better make those 3% count, Marcus replied as he pushed the engines to maximum power. What followed would later become known across the galaxy as the Verge Run, and storytellers would speak of it for generations to come. Marcus flew his old cargo ship through the debris field like a madman, weaving between destroyed warships and spinning asteroids with impossible precision. The HFY fired again and again, but Marcus always seemed to know where their shots would land before they arrived. He was not psychic and he was not lucky. He was simply human, and humans had learned to trust their instincts in ways that computers could never understand. When his shields began to fail under the constant attacks, Marcus did something that shocked everyone watching. He vented the atmosphere from his cargo, hauled into space, and then ignited it with a spark from his engines. The explosion created a massive fireball that blinded the enemy sensors and destroyed one of the pursuing ships. No computer would ever calculate such a move because it was insane, but insanity was sometimes the only path to survival. "Commander, that was extremely reckless," the AI stated. "That is the human way." Marcus laughed as he pushed deeper into the asteroid field. For 3 days and 3 nights, the chase continued. Marcus barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination while he flew through the most dangerous regions of the outer verge. The HFY called for reinforcements, and soon there were a dozen ships hunting him. But Marcus knew this region of space better than anyone. He had spent 10 years hauling cargo through these routes, learning every hidden path and every dangerous shortcut. He used that knowledge now, leading his pursuers through radiation clouds and gravity wells that damaged their ships and slowed their chase. During the brief moments when he could leave the cockpit, Marcus cared for Princess Alendra with everything he had. Her wounds were beyond his medical knowledge, but he refused to let her die. He used human techniques that the Volanti had never seen before. When her heart stopped on the second day, he performed CP or pressing on her chest and breathing into her mouth until her heart started again. When she lost too much blood, he discovered that human blood was somehow compatible with hers and gave her a transfusion from his own body. The princess watched him with growing wonder and confusion. "You are making yourself weak to make me strong," she said on the third day. "That makes no sense. Why would you do this?" Marcus, pale and tired from blood loss, simply smiled at her. "Because you needed help," he said. "That is reason enough." Alendra had lived for over 200 years, young by Volanti standards, but old by human counting. In all that time, no one had ever shown her kindness without expecting something in return. Her mother's court was full of people who smiled with their faces, but plotted with their hearts. But this human wanted nothing from her. He was destroying himself to save her simply because she was in pain. She did not understand it, but she felt something strange growing in her chest, something that felt like warmth and gratitude, and perhaps something more. On the third night, the HFY finally cornered them at the edge of Volanti space. 12 enemy ships surrounded the damaged cargo hauler, and there was nowhere left to run. Marcus looked at his sensors and knew the truth. They were not going to make it. His ship was falling apart, his weapons were empty, and his body was exhausted beyond measure. But he refused to give up. He opened a communication channel to the entire sector and began transmitting everything he had recorded: the attack on the princess, the identities of the HFY ships, and his desperate flight through the verge. Even if he died, the galaxy would know the truth. "This is Commander Marcus Cole of Earth," he announced to anyone who would listen. "I am carrying Princess Alendra of the Volanti Dominion. She was attacked by HFY separatists who wanted to murder her to hurt her mother. I am one human in a cargo ship against 12 warships, and I will probably die in the next few minutes. But I want everyone to know that I did not run. I did not abandon an innocent girl to save myself. because that is not who humans are." The HFY commander responded with cruel laughter. "Brave words for a dead man," he sneered. "The Volanthi will never arrive in time to save you. Prepare to—" His words were cut off by a blinding flash of light. A massive warship appeared out of hyperspace directly behind the HFY fleet, a Volanthi dreadnought, ancient and terrible and beautiful. And it was not alone. A dozen more ships followed, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet. The Volanthi royal fleet had arrived. The HFY tried to run, but they were too slow. In less than a minute, all 12 enemy ships were reduced to scattered atoms, and Marcus found his tiny cargo hauler surrounded by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. A communication came through, and a cold female voice spoke. "Human vessel, you will follow us to Volanthos Prime. Our queen wishes to meet the man who saved her daughter." Marcus leaned back in his seat and let out a breath he had been holding for 3 days. He looked back at Alindra, who was watching him with tears of glowing blue running down her face. "We made it," he whispered. "You made it," she corrected him. "You saved me, Marcus Cole. I will never forget what you did." Marcus smiled weakly and finally allowed himself to close his eyes. The impossible journey was over, but an even more impossible adventure was about to begin. Marcus woke up in a bed softer than anything he had ever felt before, and for a moment he thought he had died and gone to heaven. The room around him was enormous, with walls made of some kind of glowing crystal that shifted colors like a living sunset. The ceiling showed a view of space filled with unfamiliar stars, and gentle music played from somewhere he could not see. He tried to sit up and found that his body felt completely healed. The weakness from blood loss was gone, and his cuts and bruises had vanished as if they had never existed. A door opened silently, and a tall Volanthi female entered the room. She was dressed in flowing robes of silver and gold, and her bioluminescent skin glowed with steady blue light. "The human is awake," she announced to someone behind her. "Inform the queen." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat at those words. The queen. He was really going to meet Queen Sithara, the Eternal, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. Over the next few hours, Marcus learned that he was on Volanthos Prime, the sacred homeworld of the Volanthi Dominion. No human had ever set foot on this planet before, and the fact that he was here at all was causing chaos across the galaxy. The Galactic Concord was demanding explanations. Other alien empires were sending angry messages, asking why a human was receiving special treatment. News channels across 1,000 worlds were showing his face and telling the story of his impossible rescue. Marcus Cole, the nobody cargo hauler, had become the most famous human in the universe overnight. But fame meant nothing to him. All he cared about was whether Princess Alindra was okay. He asked about her constantly, and finally, a servant told him that the princess had fully recovered and was waiting to see him. But first, he had to meet the queen. They dressed him in clothes fit for a royal court, a dark suit with golden threads woven through the fabric. They tried to teach him proper Volanthi manners, but there was not enough time to learn everything. Marcus would have to trust his instincts. The throne room of Queen Sithara was the largest indoor space Marcus had ever seen. Massive pillars of living crystal rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into soft clouds of light. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species filled the hall. Ambassadors, diplomats, nobles, and observers who had come to witness this historic moment. And at the far end of the room, sitting on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single perfect diamond, was Queen Sithara herself. She was ancient beyond imagination, having ruled for over 9,000 years, but her body looked young and perfect. Her skin glowed with golden light instead of blue, and her eyes were deep purple pools that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She wore a crown of floating crystals that orbited her head like tiny moons. Marcus walked toward her through the crowd of watching aliens, and he could feel their eyes judging him with every step. Most of them thought he was nothing, just a primitive human who had gotten lucky. They expected him to bow and scrape and thank the Queen for allowing him to breathe her air. But Marcus was tired of being looked down upon. He was tired of humans being treated like insects. He had just spent 3 days fighting to save a life, and he was not going to pretend to be less than he was. He walked with his head high and his back straight, and when he reached the base of the throne, he did not fall to his knees like tradition demanded. Instead, he gave a respectful bow, the same bow he would give to any leader he respected. The crowd gasped at his audacity. No one had ever shown such casual disrespect to the Eternal Queen. Guards reached for their weapons, ready to strike him down. But Queen Sithara raised one hand, and everyone froze. She studied Marcus with those ancient purple eyes, and he felt like she was reading every thought he had ever had. She was testing him, he realized. She wanted to see what kind of person had saved her daughter. "You gave your blood to save my child," she said, and her voice was like music and thunder combined. "You risk your life for a princess of a species that has offered humanity nothing. Every logical calculation says you should have fled and saved yourself." She leaned forward on her throne. "Tell me, human, why did you stay?" Marcus knew this was the most important moment of his life. His answer would determine not just his fate, but perhaps the fate of his entire species. He could feel the weight of 1 billion human hopes pressing on his shoulders. He took a deep breath and met the Queen's eyes directly, another breach of protocol that made the court whisper in shock. "Because she was scared," Marcus said simply. "Because she was alone. Because I could help." The Queen said nothing for a long moment. "That is all?" she asked. "You wanted no reward? No political advantage? No fame or fortune?" "I did not know who she was when I found her," Marcus replied honestly. "All I saw was a wounded girl who needed help. Where I come from, that is reason enough to act. We do not calculate the value of a life before deciding to save it." Queen Sithara leaned back in her throne, and something strange happened to her face, something that made her entire court stare in disbelief. She smiled. According to the whispers that spread through the hall, the Eternal Queen had not smiled in over 3,000 years. She was known for her cold logic and her complete lack of emotion. Many believed she had forgotten how to feel anything at all. But now she was smiling at this strange little human who had defied every expectation. "I have ruled this empire for 9,000 years, she said slowly. "I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched civilizations crumble to dust. I believed I understood everything there was to know about the galaxy and the creatures living in it." She rose from her throne, and the entire hall held its breath. "But you, Marcus Cole of Earth, have shown me something I had forgotten. You have shown me that the greatest strength is not found in weapons or technology or ancient wisdom. It is found in the simple courage to help a stranger in need." She descended the steps of her throne until she stood directly in front of Marcus. "The galaxy has been wrong about humanity," she declared in a voice that echoed through the massive hall. "And I intend to correct that mistake." Marcus felt hope rising in his chest, though he did not yet understand what she meant. He was about to find out. The Queen turned to address the assembled crowd of dignitaries and ambassadors, and her next words would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. "I have made my decision," she announced. "And what I am about to do has never been done in 10,000 years of Volanti history." The entire galaxy held its breath. Queen Sithara stood before the assembled representatives of every major galactic power, and silence filled the enormous throne room like water filling a glass. Marcus watched her with confusion and hope mixed together in his chest. He had expected a reward, maybe some money or a medal, or perhaps a new ship to replace his damaged cargo hauler. But the way the Queen was speaking made him think something much bigger was about to happen. For 10,000 years, the Queen began, the Volanthi have kept our bloodline pure and separate from all other species. No outsider has ever been welcomed into our royal family. This tradition has been the foundation of our empire and the source of our strength. The ambassadors nodded, believing they understood where this was going. Surely the Queen was about to explain why she could not reward this human properly despite his brave actions. But Queen Sithara had a different plan. "Today, I am breaking that tradition," she announced. "Today, I am doing something that has never been done in the history of our dominion." She turned to face Marcus, and her purple eyes burned with ancient power. "Marcus Cole of Earth, I hereby adopt you into the royal house of Volanthi. From this moment forward, you are my son in the eyes of our law. You are a prince of the Dominion, brother to Princess Alindra, and heir to all the rights and protections that title carries." The throne room exploded into chaos. Ambassadors shouted in disbelief. Nobles screamed in outrage. Representatives from 100 worlds jumped to their feet, demanding to know if this was some kind of joke. But it was no joke. Marcus stood frozen in shock, unable to believe what he had just heard. Him? A prince? The son of the most powerful ruler in the galaxy? It was impossible. It was insane. It was real. Princess Alindra appeared at his side, having entered the throne room during the commotion. She took his hand and squeezed it tight, her silver eyes shining with joy. "Brother," she said with a warm smile, "welcome to the family." The Queen raised her hand, and silence fell once again. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "This decision is final and cannot be challenged. Marcus Cole is now and forever a member of the Volanthi royal bloodline. Any attack against him is an attack against the Dominion itself. Any insult to him is an insult to me." She turned to face the assembled aliens, and her expression was cold as ice. "But I'm not finished." The crowd fell even more silent, if that was possible. What more could she possibly announce? "I hereby declare the Cole Doctrine," the Queen proclaimed. "From this day forward, any human who demonstrates extraordinary courage or compassion will be eligible for Volanthi citizenship. The Dominion will extend its full military and economic protection to Earth and all human colonies. Any species that threatens humanity will answer to our fleets." Now even Marcus gasped in shock. This was not just about him anymore. The Queen was changing the fate of his entire species. She was lifting humanity from the bottom of the galactic order to a position of power and protection that other species had spent thousands of years trying to achieve. The Zorthan ambassador, a reptilian creature covered in green scales, rose from his seat with fury in his yellow eyes. "This is madness," he shouted. "The humans are children. They have nothing to offer the galaxy. You can't elevate them above species who have served the Concord for millennia." Queen Sithara fixed him with a stare that could freeze stars. "We have measured species by their technology, their age, their military power," she replied. "We have been fools. We failed to measure what truly matters." She gestured toward Marcus. This human flew an old cargo ship against 12 warships. He gave his own blood to save a stranger. He transmitted his final message not as a plea for help, but as a declaration of truth. When faced with certain death, he chose to stand and fight rather than run and survive. Her voice rose with passion that stunned everyone who heard it. The humans carry something we have forgotten, something the galaxy desperately needs. They carry hope. They carry defiance. They care for strangers with no expectation of reward. She turned back to the crowd. "I have watched this galaxy grow old and tired. I've watched ancient empires become stagnant and selfish. We have lost something vital, the fire that drives civilizations to greatness. But the humans still have that fire. They still believe in things worth dying for. The chamber was utterly silent as her words sank in. Perhaps it is time for the elder species to learn from the younger ones, she concluded. Perhaps it is time for us to remember what we once were, before we became so obsessed with power that we forgot about purpose. In the days that followed, the galaxy transformed. The HFY separatists who had attacked Princess Alindra, hoping to weaken the Dominion, found themselves facing the full wrath of the Volanthi military. Their bases were destroyed, their fleets scattered, and their leaders captured. The message was clear: no one touched the Queen's children and lived. Meanwhile, news of the Cold Doctrine spread to every corner of known space. On Earth, people danced in the streets. On human colonies throughout the galaxy, workers and farmers and scientists looked up at the stars with new hope in their hearts. For 50 years, humanity had been told they were worthless. For 50 years, they had been treated as servants and laborers, good for nothing but simple tasks that the elder species did not want to do themselves. Now everything had changed. The elder species who had dismissed humanity for so long suddenly realized their terrible mistake. If one human cargo hauler could become a prince of the most powerful empire, what else might humans achieve? If the Volanthi had chosen to protect Earth, what would happen to species who had mistreated humans in the past? Ambassadors who had ignored human representatives now rushed to make friends. Companies that had refused to do business with humans now offered partnership deals. Leaders who had mocked humanity now sent messages of congratulation and respect. Marcus watched all of this happening from his new quarters in the royal palace, and he felt overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. Alindra found him standing on a balcony overlooking the crystal cities of Volantis Prime, and she joined him in comfortable silence. "You look troubled, brother," she said after a while. "I am just a cargo hauler," Marcus replied. "I do not know how to be a prince. I do not know how to carry the hopes of my entire species." Alindra smiled gently. "You do not need to be anything other than what you already are," she told him. "That is exactly why my mother chose you. She does not want you to become like us, cold and calculating and political. She wants you to remind us what we have forgotten." "And what is that?" "How to care," Alindra said simply. "How to hope. How to be brave, not because it is logical, but because it is right." Marcus looked at his new sister and felt gratitude wash over him. He had saved her life, but in return, she and her mother had given him something far more valuable. They had given humanity a future, and Marcus Cole, former nobody, was going to make sure that future was worth fighting for. 5 years had passed since the day Marcus Cole became a prince, and the galaxy had transformed beyond anything anyone could have imagined. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, humanity's first Dreadnought-class warship, built with Volanthi technology freely shared. The massive vessel was larger than most space stations, carrying enough firepower to challenge any fleet in the galaxy. Below him, Earth glittered like a precious jewel against the velvet darkness of space. The planet that had once seemed so small and insignificant now stood at the center of a new galactic alliance. Ships from 30 different species orbited alongside human vessels, their crews working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. This was the Human Volanthi Alliance, a coalition built not on conquest or fear, but on the simple principles that had driven Marcus into that wreckage so long ago. No one gets left behind. No one dies alone. Everyone deserves help when they need it. These words had become the motto of the Alliance, and they had attracted species from across the galaxy who were tired of the old ways, tired of empires that measured worth by power alone. Marcus heard footsteps behind him and smiled without turning around. He knew those footsteps better than any others in the universe. "Looking at Earth again, brother?" Princess Alindra asked as she joined him at the viewport. She had changed in the past 5 years, growing from a scared young princess into a fierce leader in her own right. She had become humanity's greatest advocate among the elder species, fighting for human rights and human dignity with passion that surprised everyone who knew her. "I am remembering," Marcus replied. "Remembering what I used to dream about when I was just a cargo hauler, flying alone through the outer verge." "What did you dream about?" Marcus laughed softly. "I dreamed about mattering. I dreamed about making a difference. I dreamed about proving that humans were worth something." He turned to look at his sister. "I never imagined it would happen like this. I never imagined I would have a family on another world, or that my people would stand among the stars as equals." Alindra smiled warmly. "And yet here you are, Prince Marcus of the Volanti Dominion, hero of the Verge Run, champion of humanity, and the most stubborn person my mother has ever met." That last part made Marcus laugh out loud. His relationship with Queen Sithara had become famous across the galaxy. Unlike every other person in her court, Marcus was not afraid to disagree with the Eternal Queen. He challenged her decisions, questioned her logic, and demanded that she consider mercy alongside power. And to everyone's amazement, she loved it. After 9,000 years of being surrounded by people who agreed with everything she said, Sithara had finally found someone who treated her like a person instead of a god. Their arguments were legendary, shaking the walls of the palace and terrifying the servants, but they always ended with respect and sometimes even laughter. "Speaking of Mother," Alindra continued, "she asks when you are coming home to Volantos. The founding festival is approaching and she refuses to celebrate without you." "Tell her I will be there," Marcus promised. "Someone has to keep her humble." Alindra shook her head with amusement. Only Marcus could talk about keeping an immortal queen humble and actually mean it. A chime from the ship's communication system interrupted their conversation, and a young human officer appeared on the screen. "Prince Marcus, we are receiving a distress signal from a transport ship in Sector 9. They report that they are under attack by raiders." Marcus felt his heart quicken with familiar determination. 5 years as a prince had not changed who he was inside. He was still the man who could not ignore a cry for help. "How far away are they?" he asked. 2 hours at maximum speed, sir." "Set course immediately," Marcus commanded, "and send word to any Alliance vessels in the area. We are going to help those people." The officer saluted and disappeared from the screen. Alindra watched her brother with pride shining in her silver eyes. This was why humanity had become so beloved across the galaxy. When other species heard a distress call, they calculated the risks and rewards before responding. Humans simply went to help. It was irrational. It was inefficient. It was beautiful. "You know," Alindra said thoughtfully, "Mother once told me that she adopted you not just to reward your courage, but because she saw something in humanity that the galaxy desperately needed." "What was that?" "Hope," Alindra replied. She had lived for 9,000 years and watched countless civilizations rise and fall. She had seen every kind of wisdom and every kind of folly. But humans were different. Humans still believed that tomorrow could be better than today. Humans still fought for things that had no logical benefit. She placed her hand on his shoulder. She said that humans reminded her of what the Volanti used to be long ago, before they became so old and tired. She adopted you because she wanted your fire to spread through the galaxy and wake everyone up. Marcus considered her words as the Defiance changed course toward the distress signal. He thought about all the changes that had happened in 5 years. Humans now served on ships from dozens of species, teaching them the simple power of compassion. Human doctors had developed new medical techniques that saved millions of alien lives. Human artists had created works that made ancient beings weep with emotions they had forgotten they could feel. And throughout the galaxy, the story of Marcus Cole was told and retold, not as a tale of power or conquest, but as proof that small acts of kindness could change everything. Other species have begun to adopt the Cole doctrine for themselves, looking for brave and compassionate individuals to elevate regardless of their origin. The old hierarchies were crumbling, replaced by a new understanding that worth was measured not by age or strength, but by the willingness to help others. "I used to think I was nobody," Marcus said quietly. "I used to think that one human could never make a difference in a galaxy so vast and ancient." He turned to face his sister with determination burning in his eyes. "I was wrong. Every person can make a difference. Every act of courage matters. Every moment of compassion sends ripples across the stars." He looked back at Earth one final time. The elder species forgot this truth, but humans never did. We have always known that the smallest person can change the course of history. We have always believed that kindness is stronger than cruelty, and hope is more powerful than despair. The Defiance jumped to hyperspace, racing toward people who needed help. And Marcus Cole, cargo hauler, prince, brother, and symbol of humanity's rise, went to do what humans had always done best. He went to help, because in the end, that was the gift humanity had given the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or ancient wisdom, just the simple, powerful truth that everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves compassion, and no one should ever face the darkness alone. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter as the Human-Volanthi alliance spread across the galaxy, and a new age of hope began. And it all started because one man refused to leave a scared girl behind.